Good afternoon. I will begin with one overarching message. We at the Fed understand the hardship that high inflation is causing. We're strongly committed to bringing inflation back down, and we're moving expeditiously to do so. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. The economy and the country have been through a lot over the past 2.5 years and have proved resilient. It is essential that we bring inflation down if we are to have a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. From the standpoint of our congressional mandate to promote maximum employment and price stability, the current picture is plain to see. The labor market is extremely tight, and inflation is much too high. Against this backdrop, today the Federal Open Market Committee raised its policy interest rate by 0.75 percentage point and anticipates that ongoing increases in that rate will be appropriate. In addition, we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet. I'll have more to say about today's monetary policy actions after briefly reviewing economic developments.
The Federal Reserve on Wednesday raised interest rates to 0.75 basis points, the largest move it has made in a single meeting since 1994. The central bank messaged that further interest rate hikes will come this year as the Fed's lean on borrowing costs to damp demand and work to slow faster than expected inflation. Overall economic activity appears to have picked up after edging down in the first quarter. The policy-setting Federal Open Market Committee said in a statement repeating its commitment to ongoing increases. In economic projections released on Wednesday, the median Fed policymaker expects to further raise interest rates to roughly 3.4% by the end of the year. That would suggest another 1.75% in total rate hikes spread across the remaining 4 scheduled policy-setting meetings this year. The Fed's economic projections suggest a confidence among policymakers that a more aggressive rate hike path will cool inflation. Although the central bank has raised their expectations on inflation for 2022, the median member of the committee expects to see the pace of headline price increases to cool to 2.6% next year. These forecasts suggest inflation could further in 2024 to 2.2%, much closer to Fed's 2%. Good luck. Stagflation on the way. The damage is already done. Thank you, current administration. Let's get more feedback. Editor, roll clip, fair use.
Fed decision.
75 basis points. The Federal Reserve Open Market Committee raising the funds rate by 75 basis points to a new target range of 1.5 to 1.75%. First time they've done a 75 basis point rate increase since 1994. It plans to continue its plans to reduce the balance sheet as laid out in the prior month and anticipates additional increases in the funds rate. To wit, the new forecasts from the Federal Market Committee show that they see the rate outlook for 2022 at 3.4%. That's up from 1.9%. Pretty much meets where the market is. For 2023, it's boosted its own rate outlook, the median official, to 3.8% from 2.8%. That's a full percentage point increase. And again, pretty much meets where the market was at. Maybe the market met where the Fed was at. We don't know which way this works, but it is one of the most dramatic increases in the outlook, the near-term outlook for sure, of the funds rate that we have since we've been publishing this thing since 2011. The Fed repeating that inflation remains elevated. It sees the Ukraine war putting upward pressure on inflation. Says the China COVID situation, the lockdowns there are worsening supply chain problems. Economic activity, it points out, picked up in the second quarter from weakness in the first, obviously. It cut, however, its 2022 and 2023 growth forecast pretty sharply for 2022 by 1.1 percentage points, boosting the unemployment rate a bit for this year, 3.7%. But when you go out, they've raised it by 0.5 point in 2024. Boosted its core inflation outlook just a bit to 4.3% for this year, but otherwise sees core inflation declining to around its target of 2.3% in 2024. Finally, this was unanimous except for the fact that Esther George, the Kansas City Fed president, dissented wanting a 50 basis point increase, which is interesting in and of itself. But there you go, guys, a 75 basis point rate increase, and the Fed saying it anticipates additional increases in the funds rate will be appropriate.
Did the Fed make the right move today? Joining me to discuss, Carol Markowitz, Chris Hahn, and we've got Hannah Cox. So let's discuss this. How bad is it, Carol?
It's pretty bad. The problem is that the Biden administration continues to deny what's happening. I think that's really step one, is admitting you have a problem. And they're nowhere near that yet. They're still like, everything is fantastic, so good, couldn't be better. But Americans know what's going on. They know the price of gas. They know the price of food. There's so many things that I just think are wildly expensive right now, and also there aren't any of it. It's really just getting pretty bad out there.
I want to know what you think of Jerome Powell, and is a soft landing possible here?
Look, I hope so, but I don't think so at the moment. I think things are pretty bad right now and getting worse. Every conversation I've had the last month or so has included a conversation about the economy. And I'm not talking about conversations I've had with other political people. I'm talking about just regular people that I meet on a daily basis. People are concerned about inflation, mostly driven by oil prices. Yes, there are a lot of people hiring still. The job market has never been this robust. But things are tough, and we've got to hope that this increase they did today to interest rates is going to help slow things down with this recession, this drive towards recession, and allow the economy to start to recover.
Yes, there may be some things out of your control, but acknowledging when there were other people, particularly liberty-minded economists, looking at all of this, saying there's more money than goods right now, and this is going to be a real problem. You know, talked about the lag in consumer confidence versus consumer spending. There was also a lag in pumping so much money into the economy and then seeing prices go up and up and up because there was just more money out there in circulation than stuff to buy with it, which makes the few things that you have much more expensive. So, Hannah, for those of us, I would include you in this conversation, who've talked about ending the Fed for so long, this is one of the reasons why, because it's essentially a bubble machine. They just create bubbles, and then, you know, they think that they can get a handle on everything and rein in inflation, but they're going to do too much. You know, the soft landing requires a soft touch. I don't think they have that. Does anyone trust the Fed?
I don't think anybody who knows anything about history trusts the Fed at this point. It feels like we're on a plane barreling towards the ground, and Joe Biden and Jerome Powell are the pilots, and they're drunk, and they keep telling us everything's fine, everything's fine. And we're like, no, we're barreling towards the ground. At this point, I don't even think it's gaslighting. I think they're in very deep denial, and I think that they cannot blame the one thing that all true people who are being honest can blame, which is the Fed. They did take direct policy actions that created this. The Democrats and some Republicans, yes, also voted to keep spending and therefore printing more dollars as everything was shut down. This is not rocket science.
Well, Sean, it is official. The Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by 0.75%. That's 0.75% or 75 basis points. The Federal Reserve noting in its statement, which was released just now, quote, overall economic activity appears to have picked up after edging down in the first quarter. They continue to describe job gains as robust in recent months and said the unemployment rate has remained low. Beyond that, not much changed in the Fed statement itself. It's interesting to see that the Fed continued to describe inflation the same way it had described it in May, saying that it remains elevated, reflecting supply-demand imbalances related to the pandemic, higher energy prices, and broader price pressures. But all that you need to know is in the Fed's economic projections, which they release on a quarterly basis, the Federal Reserve noting that the reason for why it needed to hike more aggressively in this meeting is because of a higher than expected inflation path for this year. The Fed had in March projected PCE headline inflation at 4.3%. They said it's going to clock in at 5.2% by the end of 2022. That's a big reason why the Fed needed to go bigger today. They also downgraded their expectations for growth in the United States this year, projecting 1.7% GDP growth compared to 2.8%. A notable downgrade on that front. For that reason, the Fed expecting to raise rates further. They expect to get the Fed funds rate to somewhere around 3.4% by the end of this year, guys. That would imply another roughly 175 basis points throughout the next 4 meetings remaining this year. The Federal Reserve going big and going more aggressive with that announcement today. We'll see what the Fed chairman has to say at his press conference at about 2:30, guys.
Hey, guys, it's Jose, your regular Joe Blow, keeping an eye out and my ears open And just as promised, another sprinkle of a 75 basis point to just inflame fire of inflation. This will do nothing but rattle the economy, spiraling the world economy to its knees. We are in a recession, and they haven't said it, and they have yet to acknowledge their failure to take control of inflation. This will get worse. Prepare, prepare, prepare. The next FOMC meeting will take place the last week of July. Maybe another 50 basis points to bring it to 1.75. We are now at 1.25 basis points currently, and inflation is 8.6. In order to control inflation, interest must at least 12%. So 1.25% is laughable, but do your own research. As always, guys, thank you for sticking with me to the end. Guys, remember, stay free.